Okay, we just got a message. I got a message saying this meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, me
I
too.
hope so. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Anders and I have a new topic to talk about today. It actually is, there is a connection with Appalachia because we talked about the communities in Appalachia dependent on coal mining and how the coal was extracted and people back east got rich and the miners got nothing. We find this happening in other parts of the world where vulnerable populations who are living where there are resources like coal and oil and valuable metals, international companies come in, rip everything off, and then the people get nothing. And so what we're going to be talking about today is the two legal cases which the media has basically ignored. I've seen nothing in Sweden and very little in the United States, but two enormous, we would argue, miscarriages of justice. One involving the people in the country of Ecuador, and the other, an American lawyer who has been hounded by an oil company. And we'll get to that, but there's just, it's so unbelievable. We have to get into it right away. So I don't know, do you want to add anything by way of introduction before I give a brief rundown how these two court cases started?
No, I'll just echo what you said about this being eerily similar to what happened in Appalachia 100 years ago. It's basically the same story. Like, giant corporations moving in, stripping all the natural resources, poisoning the ground, and ruining the local economy and the lives of people living there. But also, it's similar in the way that private interests manage to co-opt and corrupt the law enforcement and the legal authorities. So it has a lot of echoes of the last episode, the one about Appalachia.
Yeah, it does. It was unintended, but that's the way it's turned out. Then the other thing having to do with this lawyer, Stephen Donziger in America, is as far as I can see, is totally unprecedented. I mean, it's it people will not believe it, but it is actually true. Believe us, and I'll be putting links to sources too. But our story, the first case, it starts in Ecuador, and the thing there back in the 1960s, an American oil company went there to extract oil, a company by the name of Texaco, which was later bought by Chevron, which is still, it's one of the biggest multinational, transnational companies in the world, and it has enormous political and economic power. This is also, all of these things are relevant to another important issue, and that is climate change, because these are the companies that are working against it and trying to prevent things to be done to control climate change. So keep that in mind, sort of the back of your heads, that this is another important issue, and these people, as we will see, companies like Chevron will stop at absolutely nothing to get their way. So it all starts off in Ecuador. Texaco comes down there in the 60s, invited down by the government, and they extract oil, but they, of course, do it in a very destructive manner. The indigenous people and peasants living in the Amazon area of Ecuador, and they're totally taken advantage of, and there's enormous environmental, ecological damage that is done. But anyway, in 1993, so like almost 30 years later, the people living in this area get together and they bring a case against, which is now Chevron, because Chevron owns Texaco. In 1993, they bring a case against Chevron saying that they've demanding payment for the destruction of their lives, of the places where they're living in the Amazon. And just to give you some figures, if this helps at all, but in the case, Chevron was accused of dumping toxic waste matter, 650,000 barrels, that's a lot, of crude oil, and more than 16 billion gallons of wastewater into rivers and soils in the Amazon. And again, this obviously had an enormously detrimental effect, enormously destructive effect on the lives of indigenous people and peasants living in the area. So these are the people who don't have the real political power. And there were other things too about the burning of the open air burning of gases and drenching roads with oil to prevent dust and all this sort of stuff. So there was enormous environmental damage done and damage to the lives of people living there, including a significant increase in the number of cancer cases. So, this has happened before in other countries, and quite often nothing really happens. But in this case, the provincial court actually decided in favor of the people living there. And they said, hey, Chevron, you have to pay. And of course, Chevron didn't want to pay that. The numbers are interesting too, because they were, the court decision was in 2011, that Chevron should pay $9.5 billion as a fine. This is pocket change. In the same year, no, sorry, 2018, so it's a bit later, Chevron was valued at $150 billion. They are worth more than twice the GDP of Ecuador. So they had pocket change lying around, but they weren't going to pay it. Nope, not at all. So it was appealed to the Supreme Court in Ecuador. And lo and behold, the Supreme Court sided with the provincial courts and the people living there and said, no, you have to pay this. And Chevron says, no, we're not going to pay this. And this is where we're soon getting into the Donziger case. But they try through both the legal system, the international legal system, which is set up in favor of companies, protecting their profits. That's the whole purpose of these international courts. But they also started an enormous blackmail campaign against Ecuador and against Stephen Donziger, which we'll look at more closely. And basically trying to intimidate the Ecuadorian government. Also, the plaintiffs tried to get money from Chevron, but Chevron took all this money out of Ecuador and put in other countries. And then the plaintiffs, again, this is a very interesting case, said, okay, well, we're going to go after Chevron's assets in other countries. But of course, anybody who knows international finance knows that Chevron and other countries, it's not really Chevron, it's some other company. So they're getting screwed all over the place. But then Chevron took the case, went one step further and went to these international courts that their job is to say, to protect companies doing business in different countries. That's their whole function. So, and just because one of these courts is in The Hague, I think people misunderstand this. This is like the human rights course in The Hague, and it's not at all. And I won't go into detail, but this international court, whose sole function is to protect private enterprise in different countries, not surprisingly finds in favor of Chevron. But they do so on the basis of all sorts of lies. And again, we'll talk about this with Donziger. I mean, they could have found in favor of Chevron, but they took it one step further and said that the Ecuadorian government had acted illegally, and that the plaintiffs had acted illegally. And Donziger, who was the lawyer for the plaintiffs, they had all acted illegally. And in doing so, they completely overstepped their bounds as an international court defending the rights of, to make a profit in different countries. So the whole thing is quite amazing. So, and as one commentator said, basically what this court did was totally undermine Ecuadorian independence, because here's an international company saying to Ecuador, your Supreme Court decided this, but it's wrong. You know, we get rid of things. So this is quite amazing, and also points to a need to reform the international legal situation. So basically what happened was the plaintiffs won. Chevron was supposed to pay for the ecological damage they did. The plaintiffs won in the provincial courts, they won in the Supreme Court of Ecuador, but then this was totally undermined by an international court. And this brings us to the lawyer for the plaintiffs, because it wasn't enough to say that Ecuador has no right to independence or an independent court system. No, they actually go after, and it starts at the same time. It starts before the court goes to before Chevron goes to the, but as soon as they actually lost in Ecuador, Chevron, this enormous multinational company, goes after the lawyer for the plaintiffs. It's this guy who obviously had no idea what he was getting into. He had actually won a very important environmental case in Ecuador, and he's in Manhattan, and then he finds that Chevron goes after him with a vengeance, because they're going to get him. They're going to stop him at any cost. And there's even documents stating this. This is their point of view. This is what they're going to do. They're going to destroy this person. So it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but Anders has more of the details. So by the end of this, I think you'll agree with us. Go ahead.
Yeah, when you look at the case of Donziger, it's kind of obvious what's going on here, what Chevron is trying to do. What they did was in 2011 to stop Donziger from trying to get money paid out to the Ecuadorians that Chevron owed $10 billion to. They brought a RICO suit against Steven Donziger. And for anybody who doesn't know, a RICO suit, RICO laws are basically laws targeted at fighting organized crime and insider trading and stuff like that. Any kind of organized criminal enterprise. And the case they brought was predicated on a former Ecuadorian judge testifying that Steven Donziger had used wire fraud, extortion, falsified documents, and so on in order to manipulate the judicial process in Ecuador. Basically, what they claimed was he ghost wrote judgment, judicial statement, and paid bribes to this judge, Albert Guerrero, and the presiding judge in the case. And they read this ghostwritten judgment as the official judgment, and that's basically how Donziger won the case, for the $10 billion case for the Ecuadorians. Since this was a case, it started in 2011 and finished in 2014, I think. Since then, back in 2016, if I recall correctly, Guerrero has come out officially and said that, yeah, I basically made the whole thing up. Chevron brought him and his family to the US, paid for immigration lawyers for him and his family, and gave him a monthly salary or stipend, or whatever you want to call it. So it's a bribe, I think, of $12,000, which is a fair bit of money. And in return, he testified that Donziger was a corrupt lawyer, basically. So this is like a known fact, and Donziger was he lost this court case, and he has since tried to appeal it 2 different times, but it's been struck down. And the fact that the main witness for the prosecution has come out and basically admitted to lying in his testimony hasn't been taken into account. So he's still owed justice for that one, I would say. But it gets worse. After losing this case, in order to prevent Donziger from claiming money for his clients, and as restitution for the RICO conviction, the judge in the case, Judge Kaplan, ordered Stephen Donziger to turn over his computers, his phones, basically all his electronic communication equipment to Chevron, to enable Chevron to search for his assets to get payment damages for the RICO conviction. And Donziger refused because there's a little thing called attorney-client privilege. You're supposed to be able to communicate with your clients without anybody listening, and of course his phone and his computer is full of like emails and stuff from clients, so he can't just turn it over to Chevron and expect them not to look at that stuff. Because of this, well, first of all, the Judge Kaplan, goes to the federal prosecutor and says, this guy's in contempt of court. He won't turn over his phone. You need to prosecute him. And the public prosecutor in New York refuses, on good grounds, because he's constitutionally protected from this kind of search. And what Kaplan does next is possibly the weirdest detail in the entire case. Instead of accepting the decision of the public prosecutor not to prosecute this, he appoints another judge to preside over this case, this contempt case. Keep in mind, going forward, that Judge Kaplan is the aggrieved party here, because Donziger won't comply with his court order. The normal procedure when bringing someone to trial is ask a prosecutor to prosecute the case. If it goes to trial, then you select a judge randomly. Instead of doing it the normal way, Judge Kaplan handpicks a judge he's friendly with, Judge Preska, and he also, because he doesn't have a public prosecutor to prosecute the case, he goes to a private law firm. And sorry, I'm just going to close my window.
I got close too.
I'm sorry about this, folks. We have like thunderstorms and
sorry about that.
Air raid alarms.
We were wondering when we would get the air raid sirens again.
Yeah.
It's again. There's nothing happening. They just test their early warning system, as it were. Yeah. And I always thought it was the first Monday of each month, but well, I don't know. We can't keep track of it. But anyway, it happened today. Okay.
It happens every once in a while. Sorry for the interruption, folks. What Kaplan did was he went to a private law firm and asked them to prosecute Donziger and work as some weird, unprecedented form of private prosecutor in the case. Which is, this is, I have to ask you, Daniel, you know a lot more about the law than I do. Has this ever been done? And
I find it quite amazing. I mean, the whole thing, the circumstances, it reads like, I was going to say science fiction, but maybe that's the wrong thing. But it's completely no, you don't do things like this. I mean, the thing that struck me first about this when I started reading about it was, as you mentioned, it was a RICO case, and I remember, I mean, the 50s. I mean, for me, RICO is organized crime. You know, these people appearing in court, you know, clearly gangster figures, and it was used very successfully. So I think, RICO, what does this have to do with environmental justice? But they managed to use this, and also Kaplan. Some interesting things here. I don't know if I can find it in my notes, but yeah, Kaplan, who was the first judge. He wasn't actually employed by Chevron, but he had very nice things to say about Chevron. And again, he's gone on record, and he said that Chevron is very important to the American economy. It employs thousands of people and supplies commodities, important commodities like gas, heat, and oil. I can, it's difficult not to laugh, and other things, you know, for the American people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and also
therefore we should go after Donziger. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. And then, yeah, as you said, it goes one step further. He point in this case, which was turned down, and the court that turned it down in Manhattan. It's very important. It's called the Southern District in New York, which has
twice.
twice. And it has been, that was another thing that surprised me. How can the Southern District try this? And they didn't. But again, if you look at Wikipedia and so forth, then you don't get all the facts. But the Southern District is a highly respected legal body in the United States. They're going after Donald Trump, for example. And also even the former mayor was a prosecuting attorney there, but that was a long time ago. But they have an excellent reputation. But he manages, I guess, to use the court building or something. So Kaplan is there as a judge. There's no trial by jury. Kaplan decides the RICO charges. And then, as you say, in the second case, when he's in a contempt of court, he appoints a judge he handpicks, and that is very important, as you say. It's on a rotating basis. You're supposed to get a judge who just happens to be there. No, he appoints the judge, and he appoints a private prosecuting attorney, which comes from a firm which has ties to Chevron.
Yeah.
Also, just in context of that, in Ecuador, Chevron used something like 200 lawyers linked to, I think it was 60 different law firms. So it's all set up by Chevron, but I guess you're using the formal building of a federal courthouse. It's just amazing how they got it. So no, it's as far as I know, completely unprecedented. I guess you'd have to go back to maybe the 19th century or something. Again, the robber barons, you know, maybe they could buy courts like this, but this isn't really buying a federal judge. This is just, you're putting your own people in there.
Yeah, like both Judge Kaplan and Judge Prescott and the law firm, they all have ties to Chevron.
Right.
And like another thing that you touched on that I forgot to mention concerning the first trial, the RICO trial, is Chevron initially demanded $60 billion in damages. And 2 weeks before the trial was to take place, they realized that, that entitles Donziger to a jury trial.
Right.
So they dropped all their demands for monetary restitution, just went ahead with just a good old RICO trial without seeking damages in order to get a trial without a jury.
Right.
And so no jury has ever looked at this case. No. And this second trial, this contempt trial, which is still ongoing at the moment, Donziger has been convicted, but no judgment has been
Yeah.
been issued yet. Donziger demanded a jury trial this time as well, but Judge Preska refused to give him one, and also because of for obvious reasons, Donziger wanted this contempt trial to be televised or broadcast via Zoom, and the judge refused that as well. So what you have is basically a private law firm and two judges who seem very corrupt. I don't want to like slander anyone, but it looks kind of
there are
corrupt.
close ties with them.
Yeah,
I mean, not exactly suitable.
Yeah, they're basically in a closed courtroom without an audience and without a jury prosecuting a lawyer for winning a case.
Exactly.
Against a major energy corporation. And it's like, just looking at the details of this case, it's I haven't seen anything like this in all my life, and I've read some stories now about like people in Hollywood falling all over each other to get the rights to this story, and that's completely unsurprising, because I mean, this is when you start reading up on this case, it's almost like a legal thriller or something. You literally couldn't make this stuff.
That's better than science fiction. It's a John Grisham novel. It's a John Grisham novel. Donziger is definitely a character, and he never expected to find himself in a novel by John Grisham. We should also mention that not only has he been taken to court, but he's been under house arrest since the process started, I think. I'm desperately looking in my notes.
Well, since 2019, up until the trial started on May 10th of this year, I think, he'd been in house arrest for like 650 days, which is fairly close to 2 years, and he's accused of a misdemeanor, which carries a maximum penalty of 6 months if he's convicted.
Right.
So he's been locked up in his apartment with like an electronic foot brace for almost 2 years, almost 4 times as long as the maximum sentence for the crime he's accused of. Yeah. Which is also kind of crazy, and it's all because Judge Preska ruled that he's a flight risk.
He's a flight risk, with his computers. No, it's quite, again, it's a John Grisham novel. I'm glad you gave the Hollywood connection. And not only that, has he been in house arrest. Again, you would think there's some human rights violations there somewhere. And it'll be interesting to see what happens later on. But I mean, they've gotten away with it thus far, but he's been under house arrest. He's also been disbarred.
Yeah.
And strike number 3 is that he is prohibited from making a living. So he's been impoverished. He's a lawyer. Actually, I think it's a friend of his. He's a Harvard Law School graduate. And a friend of his, I think it is, or somebody teaching at Harvard Law School, he's using this case as an illustration of I forget, it has a nice name for it, but bad court cases.
Yeah.
So it's already entered the lore of legal education. This is a case you'll read about in America. Case law is enormously important, but and this is all because of Kaplan and the power he's had to subvert the American justice system. And also, I think, I mean, now they that was another interesting, I read when the contempt case was going on, and I forget if it was the judge or the prosecuting attorney, but somebody said, well, Donziger didn't even try to defend himself. He didn't. We asked him for evidence, to support. But it becomes farce, doesn't it?
Yeah.
First
like
history, then as far as and he said, no, of course there was no point. We just wanted to get to the decision. We knew they were going to find against us. So why should we present anything? And also I read somewhere, and I hadn't had a chance to check it out. Maybe you know more, that with the 6 months, that he'll be found guilty and sentenced to 6 months. And they were hoping to appeal the decision after that, but there was something about the time of launching an appeal, like it had to be within 6 months, and he couldn't do it because he was going to be in jail. I mean, it becomes more and more absurd. I don't know. They haven't actually handed down the judgment yet, so.
No, and also like I can't see him ever getting a fair trial or a fair judgment as long as these judges are involved in the process.
Yeah.
So, but the good news is a lot of people have started to shine a light on the Donziger case, because like the people in Ecuador getting the money they have a right to basically depends on Stephen Donziger being freed from charges, because what Kaplan did during the RICO trial was basically state that the Ecuadorian judgment was unjust and corrupt, so it's unenforceable, or shouldn't be enforced. And like unless Donziger's honor is reinstated, that decision is probably going to stand. But like I said, a lot of people have been making a lot of noise about this lately in like the past 6 months. And good news is it's starting to work, it seems like. Like 29 Nobel laureates came out with like a signed letter, which is also kind of a good summary of just the most important points of the case concerning Donziger's side of it. And AOC just sent a letter to the Justice Department asking them to asking Merrick Garland to have a look at the case. And like if the Attorney General gets involved, I can't see one single corrupt judge getting away with this kind of thing, because there's so much about this case that it's just obviously wrong, and just obvious miscarriages of justice. So it's like it's not going to go anywhere through the normal channels, I think.
No, that's already been exhausted. But you're very right. I mean, when you knew about this before I did. I happened to see something. This must be what, three weeks ago or something. Just happened to see something on this program Rising YouTube on from the Hill, and Susan Sarandon and Marianne Williamson, if I got her name right, they were interviewed. I thought, that could be interesting to hear what they had. They didn't know what the subject was. And then they're talking about this. No, I can't believe this. This is not true. But at that time, this was some weeks ago. Nobody was talking about it at all. And still, the mainstream media, corporate media, is totally washed its hands of it. They have not repeated it at all. So, say if you look at Wikipedia and sites like that, they just say the same stuff that Chevron has been saying. But starting about 3 weeks ago, there's more noise on social media and on Twitter. There's a hashtag free Stephen thing, the Nobel laureates and so forth. So, I mean, this is the only way. Not only you can attack this corrupt decision, but it's also really the only way you can, in a larger context, hold these oil companies responsible for what they've actually done. It's through public opinion, it's through people making noise and so forth. The corporate media is not going to do anything. It's too controversial or whatever. I don't know. It seems to be a very newsworthy story. As you say, if Hollywood thinks it's interesting, why doesn't it? Well, the Intercept, yes. So those are the exceptions of investigative journalism, also environmental journals and so forth. They've given this some attention. But it's just through these actions by ordinary people that you start to it's publicized, and then the more people that find out about this, you realize that no, this isn't the way things are supposed to be done. We have an independent judiciary in the United States. It's not a private court system.
No, exactly. Like it's supposed to be done in public,
Yes.
and there's supposed to be some like division of powers and responsibilities.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to have one judge making all the calls and appointing his friends and and colleagues, basically, moneyed interests that he has connections to run the case. That's absolutely absurd. I mean, it's completely unjust. And also, like, the whole thing is, I heard some legal, some academic guy, legal scholar, who studied the case, make the point that this is like a textbook example of a SLAPP lawsuit, which is like a vindictive, vindictive legal action from someone with a lot of money to basically harass somebody out of demanding their rights. And this is just like a textbook example of it. And if you allow that kind of thing to stand, it sets a really dangerous precedent, because if Chevron wins this thing and gets away with it, then they're never going to pay a single dollar for anything they've ever done wrong.
Exactly.
Why would you? You can just legally harass people into backing off.
Exactly.
So it sets a really dangerous precedent if people let this kind of BS go on.
Yeah.
And also, like you said, also big props to like the Intercept and independent media for covering this stuff, because I first heard about this on just like a podcast, a comedy podcast, which comments on, on current politics. And I've never seen a single word about this in Swedish newspapers. And it's kind of a big thing. Like I've never heard the name Stephen Donziger before.
No.
I heard about it on like a comedy show, and like that's also just a huge disgrace. Like the media really fell down on this one.
It is. And I was thinking of an earlier video we did also, because it wasn't covered in the Swedish media. And even at that time, even in the British, although that changed, and that was this law proposal to basically, criminalize protests. And, again, I thought, no, this can't be true. Well, it actually was true, but nothing before or during or after. And then, I mean, people started criticizing it and demonstrating against it in Britain. So, people knew about it. So, but those demonstrations were never reported here in Sweden. And I mean, it raises serious questions about the role of the media. And I know this is a big talking point in, alternative or progressive sites and so forth. And maybe sometimes people think, well, they're too critical of, CNN and MSNBC and so forth. But I mean, seriously, why don't you take up these cases? And I think if you don't take up cases like this, what's your function? And then you have Fox, which is the biggest news media, and they're spewing out their interpretation of reality. But it's really, what is the so-called corporate or mainstream media? What are they doing? And again, the impact on democracy. I mean, if you want to have a democratic system, you have to have a democratic press. Is very important in the American tradition. Democratic press that investigates these things and helps to form opinion. But if you just have sound bites all the time, then it's not really, and you ignore these important things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, in order to have a functioning democracy, you need a functioning independent legal system. And if you don't have that, then you have to have media that covers that fact.
Mm.
Like it's all supposed to to work together and guarantee
Yeah.
like vital aspects of democracy, but
Yeah.
everything's just like failed in this case.
Yeah.
Thankfully, like I said, stuff is actually starting to happen,
Right.
turning in a um, more beneficial direction, I think,
Yeah.
for Donziger. Like when a congresswoman is looking closer at the case, then
Yes.
like there's some cause for hope at least. But at the same time, like a lot of people owe Stephen Donziger an apology. Like the Wall Street Journal, for example, their coverage of this has just been absolutely atrocious.
Yeah.
They should basically be sued for defamation of character.
Exactly.
They painted him as a corrupt criminal and just like all around marauding madman, basically, trying to extort money from innocent businesses. And it's so far from the truth,
It is.
from the facts of the case.
No,
But I
that's
mean,
even worse than no reporting at all. No,
yeah,
it's quite amazing, and they get away with it. And again, I mean, if you just read this stuff online, you think, yeah, boy, this sounds like a really bad person, so forth. But that's so, and obviously, I mean, reporting on it now like they do, they know the facts, they know
yeah.
what's going on. They can read the Intercept as well. No, but I mean, it's just so
Well, like, they can get away with it legally because the fact that Guerra came out and admitted that his testimony was fabricated, that hasn't been heard in court,
no,
basically.
it was after the fact. It was
Exactly. So they can just ignore that
Yeah.
and just go along with the official story controlled by Judge Kaplan. But I mean, they might get away with something like that legally, but just ethically, as journalists, I don't even understand why you're working in that field
Exactly.
if that's the way you operate.
Yeah.
It's disgusting, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like Wall Street Journal is just a trash magazine. If you ask me, it's what they've done in this case is just unforgivable.
No, unfortunately, it still has the name of, see people, oh, Wall Street Journal, they know about finance and everything. But the current ownership, and as it's been for the past number of years, I mean, it's no, if you want to find a credible news source, you don't go to the Wall Street Journal, definitely not. So, but somebody, maybe political or even somebody, I mean, the journalists on the New York Times, that could do a good job as well, and even they can, that organization can be less than convincing sometimes. I mean, they stay away from but there are individual journalists, and hopefully, such individual journalists will start, taking this up.
Yeah.
You would have him, but poor Donziger. I mean, I'm thinking. I mean, his life has been ruined. I mean, he has to get back. Actually, there was a proceeding when you're disbarred. It's usually for a certain period of time and for really serious offenses. And I forget that there's not an arbitrator, but like an expert you go to ask if, well, do you think this guy should be reinstated again? And the person they asked said, yeah, you definitely should be reinstated. This is like a year or so ago. And then somebody else connected with this whole Kaplan farce says, no.
No, this independent person we brought in is too lenient to Donziger, so it's overruled. It's like a really dark farce.
Yeah, it is. Oh, we look forward to the Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I don't see, I mean, how you keep your mental health. No, I mean, he is owed so much in damages that it's just, I mean, you can't, I mean, his life has been destroyed. And
and at this point, there's no like getting around it. He's Stephen Donziger is an American hero, standing up for what's right and taking on basically like all of corporate America and the worst parts of the legal system. Like, he deserves support from everybody who has anything to contribute, basically.
Yeah.
And even if it's just talking about it, I think that's
Exactly.
important too. Like,
Yeah.
a lot more light needs to be shed on this thing. Like, there's a reason why they don't want to give him a jury trial, and there's a reason why they don't want people present in the court, and there's a reason why they don't want his trial televised. It's because they have something to hide. And like, it needs to be just like dragged into the light.
Yes. Yeah, and hopefully that's what's happening now, as I say, through social media and through Twitter and so forth, and then getting more and more attention, and the Nobel laureates and everything else, that there will be light, and hopefully the Department of Justice will do what it's supposed to do and then investigate. There's certainly a greater chance it would happen now than under Donald Trump. I mean, then you could just, forget about it. This guy, throw away the key. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. We had thought about dealing with another topic today. I don't know how long you've been talking. Been talking maybe for 50 minutes or so?
Something like that. Maybe we should just like mention it.
Yes, I think we should as a preview, because
talk about it next week.
Definitely, I think that's a very good idea, because we're both, it's something which, yes, we feel strongly about and very upset. So as a preview of what we're going to be talking about next time, to tune in, what's, because something else has happened more recently in American politics. And yes, I'll let you introduce that.
Oh, where do I even begin?
No, that's why I didn't want to, but talk about Miscarriage.
Okay, so Daniel and I have both, independent of each other, been watching like interviews with Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema regarding the filibuster and bipartisanship and the imminent non-passing of the infrastructure bill and stuff like that. And we've both like worked ourselves and each other up into like a frenzy about this. So that's what we're gonna discuss next time. We're not gonna be able to do this in 10 minutes because there's so much stupidity to
we're talking about stupidity in another context.
Yeah.
From a court case in New York to no, and what really set us both off independently was Joe Manchin, a person we've mentioned before, has been playing the bipartisanship thing, and well, he can't do anything. He's supposed to be a Democratic senator, and he's the one holding things up. He says you have to have the Republicans on board, and we will seriously question his position there. But he came out, and I was surprised, but he's really shown his true colors. He says,
Yeah.
I am going to vote against the Voting Rights Act. That's not the technical name, but this we dealt with this in an earlier video. And this act, I mean, it would, if enacted, and it should be enacted, is passed the House, would actually give America a well-functioning democratic system, the sort of system that, for example, we enjoy here in Sweden or in other countries, democracies, and he's going to vote against it. And how can a Democrat vote against this? And then, yeah, and this affects other things that are, because there's sort of a backlog of things to get through the Senate, like the infrastructure bill and so forth. But I mean, it was such a shocking admission, and maybe it's difficult to convey it to a non-American audience, but when you have a Democratic senator, and we've already written off the Republican Party, although I would say I am more sympathetic towards Senator Romney, who is totally lacking a backbone. I would call him a moderate. This is another thing we'll get into. That Manchin is supposed to be a moderate. No, he's a conservative, as conservative as you can get. If you want a moderate, somebody like Senator Romney doesn't have much of a backbone, but anyway, he's a moderate. But how you can do this, we just find, and it has such enormous repercussions for everything that's going on in American politics today. I'll stop
Yeah, I
talking.
mean, it's gonna doom the Democrats in the midterms.
Yeah,
Simple as that. It's they basically have no hope, I think, of keeping their slim majorities in the midterms. Uh, Basically because of Joe Manchin. Like he's
yeah,
selling out his own party, and one of the funniest things about this is his reasoning, his stated reason, at least,
yeah.
for doing this, which is bipartisanship. He doesn't want to just like shove election reform down the throat of
You don't
Republicans.
want to do
He
that.
wants to work with the Republicans and come to an understanding, an agreement with Republicans. And it's, I mean, I don't think he believes what he's
No.
saying. Like it's too stupid and too obvious a lie
Yeah.
For someone like him to actually believe.
Right.
But it's just, I mean, as you can see, I'm kind of worked up. I also found it kind of funny. Like you emailed me last night asking if I'd seen the statement from Manchin, and I was like, yes, I have. And then a couple of hours later, you sent me a link to an article about Tove Jansson and nature writing. And I was laughing, thinking, oh, he's doing this to calm me down.
No, I'd forgotten to do it. Yeah, we're both big Tove Jansson fans. Oh,
Yeah.
amazing writer.
No, like the whole Mansion and Kirsten Cinema as well.
Yeah,
Like speaking about bipartisanship and using bipartisanship as an
right.
excuse to
That's
not do anything,
exactly.
to never take any kind of action on any front. Like it's disgraceful, and they're selling out their party and they're selling out their voters, and in the end they're selling out American democracy because as you said, like the voting rights bill, it's essential to fix injustices in the current election system
Right.
in America. Like you can't have a fair election unless you do something about
Right.
some of this stuff, and blocking that in order to like satisfy some imagined need for national reconciliation and bipartisanship. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Mhm.
It's
Yes, I think that a good note to end on. But next time we will be looking more closely at this whole issue of bipartisanship and voting rights and how what is bipartisanship and why these are not really the reasons that both Manchin and Sinema are giving. I mean, it sounds nice, bring the Republicans on board, but I mean, we will be explaining in detail why. This is no, they just don't want to take a stand. We'll look more closely at that, and of course, this very contentious thing about the filibuster, and maybe by next week, uh, maybe some other things will have happened, and we'll be in a better situation. But I'm afraid not, because as you said, Andres, there's disastrous consequences for the Democratic Party and for democracy. So
yeah.
well done, John. No, so yeah, we have to stop at some point, otherwise we just go on. But anyway, we will look very closely at these issues because they are very important issues in American politics, much more important than Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema. I'd like to thank Andres for another engaging discussion. And I'll put some links in the description. But by all means, look into this issue more, what we've been talking about the case in Ecuador and Stephen Donziger, and inform yourselves about this. There is information on social media and hopefully in more mainstream media as well. So we'll see what sort of disturbance we have next time, air raids or thunder, or see what happens. You know.
Lawnmowers.
Lawnmowers. There's so many things to choose from, but actually the video link seemed to work very well this time. So
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Amazing.
Exactly. So thanks
Thank you
again.
so much.
I will try to press the right button here, and we'll be back next week. Thanks again.
Bye.